But before Caitlin Clark's season-ending injury, WNBA tickets were averaging $89. The moment she went down, price crashed nearly 30%, plummeting to $62 a seat. That's kind of crazy. And there's a lot of reasons for this, but obviously the biggest reason.
The WNBA is going through what can only be called a financial and ratings disaster. Commissioner Kathy Angelbert observes as the league's fleeting moment in the spotlight quickly turns into a terrible nightmare.
WNBA and the Indiana Fever did not want people to know that Caitlin Clark was going to be out for the season. I can tell you, from the very day that they decided to let that go public, everything has dropped off a cliff. Views on this channel, the television ratings, the interest, Thanos snapped out of existence. People were trying to hang on to the possibility this whole time. Look, so many people stayed engaged with the team because they thought the cavalry was coming.
The Indiana Fever's official announcement that their star guard Caitlin Clark would not be playing for the rest of the 2025 season served as the impetus for this catastrophe, forcing the WNBA to confront the harsh fact that, without their golden goose, they are merely an expensive sideshow that no one wants to watch.
Late July, the WNBA proudly flaunted ratings for the All-Star Game, which drew 2.2 million viewers. Of course, they conveniently failed to mention that ratings were down 36% from the record ratings that Caitlin Clark pulled the year before. Early August, ESPN pointed out that the Seattle Spankers and the Indiana Felines, without Caitlin Clark, drew 1.6 million on ABC. ESPN claimed that WNBA ratings were up 20% over last year, mostly without Caitlin Clark playing. But over the last 3 or 4 weeks, both the WNBA and the media have been strangely silent. I wonder...
Clark's season-ending statement has resulted in numbers that are absolutely disastrous for the league's financial situation. The average cost of tickets for WNBA playoff games has dropped by 30% in a single day, with certain games seeing price reductions of as little as $25 from over $200. When Clark was first hurt, the Indiana Fever, who had been charging top dollar for tickets throughout the season, saw their away game prices plummet by 71%, from an average of $137 to only $80.
This is more than a small change.
The league's full reliance on a single player is revealed by this market collapse.
The WNBA are currently treading dangerous waters. It's sharks out there, y'all. It is sharks out there in the deep ends of that water. Reality is hitting, and the playoffs have the potential to expose even more. Ratings could potentially crash in this year's WNBA playoffs without Caitlin Clark. Networks have their eyes peeled to what is going on, and ticket prices plummeted 30% while Caitlin Clark was out with her.
The 2025 WNBA season, which broke attendance records and brought in an unprecedented amount of money, was slated to be the league's pinnacle accomplishment. Rather, it has turned into a tutorial in how easily manufactured success can falter when it is based on such a shaky foundation. Due to a string of crippling injuries, Clark, who had never missed a game during her debut WNBA season or at college, only participated in 13 games in 2025. The financial data unequivocally shows that the league that claimed to have arrived is quickly reverting to its pre-existing condition of irrelevance in the absence of her captivating presence.
And again, she's only on one team, but a very big chunk of the total attendance in WNBA is from the Indiana Fever. They have the second highest home attendance, and teams are literally moving arenas. So yeah, a lot of teams, whether it be the Lynx opening the Upper Bowl, whether it be the Wings, the Dream, the Sky, all of these teams moving games. All of these teams are moving games for the Indiana Fever, regardless of who it is. They all have to sell those seats. And a lot of people don't want to go, and it's super cheap. Like, it's a lot easier to fill a 10,000 seat arena without Caitlin Clark than to fill 20,000. So you're going to have to find a way to do it anyway, which is what a lot of people are going to be doing, trying to sell tickets.
Subscribe if you're enjoying it. The immediate financial effects of this crisis are not the only negative effects. It's the total collapse of WNBA interest in the sports media. The league is already cooling off more quickly than ice cream in a freezer for major networks and sports pundits who have been considering it as essential coverage. The WNBA is struggling to stay relevant without its biggest storyline, as the same media figures that herald the league's breakout moment are subtly turning their focus back to more lucrative sports coverage. Sports media organizations that had given the WNBA a lot of attention during Clark's ascent are now cutting back on their WNBA parts. Some networks have even been known to remove WNBA footage entirely from prominent programming spots. The harsh truth is that fan interaction and ratings drive sports media. Additionally, the WNBA has lost its appeal to general audiences in the absence of Clark creating headlines and memorable moments. ESPN, which made significant investments in WNBA coverage during the Clark period, must now confront the unsettling reality that the star power of a single player determined all of their programming choices.
The WNBA playoffs begin on Sunday. Have you noticed that no one is talking about it? This time last year, the WNBA was dominating talk shows on ESPN and FS1. Content creators on YouTube were flooding the platform with WNBA videos. This year, it's complete silence. Obviously, ratings for the playoffs are going to be a flaming ass fire. But if I'm the WNBA, I am concerned.
The fact that viewership has entirely fallen without Clark on the court may be the most damning sign of the league's desperation. With Clark, games that would have attracted over 1.8 million people are now barely making it to 200,000. A startling 89% drop that shows how overblown the league's popularity had gotten. Even games involving alleged rivals, such as the Chicago Sky and Indiana Fever, which formerly produced enormous ratings wars between Clark and Angel Reese, are now attracting such low viewership that networks are hesitant to disclose the embarrassing viewership statistics.
The WNBA sins Colin Cowherd trashing the WNBA. It's Caitlin Clark and only Caitlin Clark. Last year, he used to lead shows talking Caitlin Clark, talking WNBA. This year, with her injury, didn't even bother wasting more than 10 minutes talking about the WNBA this year. No Shanae, no Elle Duncan, no Monica McNutt, none of those.
The decline in ticket prices is not limited to Indiana Fever games. As fans understand that the product isn't attractive enough to warrant premium pricing without Clark, WNBA playoff contest prices are dropping dramatically across the league. At the height of Clark mania, games that used to sell for $200 suddenly only cost $25. Additionally, arenas are having trouble filling seats even with those lower pricing. The league's entire future financial model is at risk due to this fundamental change in consumer demand. The thing that irritates me the most about this whole issue is how avoidable it was. Clark's injury that ended his season wasn't an isolated incident. IT was the outcome of a league that neglected to safeguard its most prized possession while permitting an excessively physical culture to thrive around her. Clark suffered from a series of groin injuries during the summer and quad injuries in May as a result of the WNBA's apparent encouragement of constant physical abuse. Poor officiating and insufficient player protection procedures methodically ruined the league's whole financial future, while they should have been erecting safeguards around their golden ticket.
Now,
nationally televised games have mysteriously disappeared. I knew the WNBA lived in a world of make-believe, but I never realized they were magicians. It seems when ratings fail to meet expectations, the WNBA makes ratings disappear faster than pants at the Butt Bongo Festival. Sports Media Watch, which is the go-to source for sports ratings, Sports Media Watch, they have not updated WNBA ratings since August.
The decline in ticket prices is not limited to Indiana Fever games. As fans understand that the product isn't attractive enough to warrant premium pricing without Clark, WNBA playoff contest prices are dropping dramatically across the league. At the height of Clark mania, games that used to sell for $200 suddenly only cost $25. Additionally, arenas are having trouble filling seats even with those lower pricing. The league's entire future financial model is at risk due to this fundamental change in consumer demand. The thing that irritates me the most about this whole issue is how avoidable it was. Clark's injury that ended his season wasn't an isolated incident. It was the outcome of a league that neglected to safeguard its most prized possession while permitting an excessively physical culture to thrive around her. Clark suffered from a series of groin injuries during the summer and quad injuries in May as a result of the WNBA's apparent encouragement of constant physical abuse. Poor officiating and insufficient player protection procedures methodically ruined the league's whole financial future, while they should have been erecting safeguards around their golden ticket.
Now,
No, them Caitlin Clark tickets was hard to get your hands on. It don't matter if she was playing in LA, Indiana, Atlanta, Seattle. It did not matter. Afghanistan. It didn't matter. It was hard to get your hands on a Caitlin Clark ticket. Y'all see how many people showed up in Iowa? They could have filled up a football stadium. A football stadium. Super Bowl. Yeah, that is the demand for.
Commissioner Kathy Engelbert is currently in the unachievable position of attempting to preserve league legitimacy while simultaneously witnessing the WNBA's recent successes foundation fall apart in real time. The woman who had been boldly talking about plans for growth and higher revenue estimates now has to face the hard fact that her league's whole growth strategy was centered around a single player who is now only watching games from the sidelines. Engelbert's worst-case scenario, in which the league reverts to its pre-2024 level of irrelevance, is unfolding precisely as detractors had predicted. Audiences have entirely rejected the league's frantic attempts to create alternate plot lines without Clark, despite initiatives to encourage
A Nike commercial other than a Gatorade commercial. How many commercials have you seen of companies putting WNBA players as the face of their commercial? I can't think of one. The only commercial that comes to mind is the Paige Becker's Coach commercial, and they don't even put that on television. That seems to be strictly a League Pass commercial that they show us while we're watching WNBA on League Pass. Other than that, has there been any State Farm commercials not featuring Caitlin Clark that you've seen throughout this?
Without their biggest draw, the WNBA playoffs, which ought to be the league's PRI. Perhaps the most distressing part of this dilemma is the consequences for the playoffs Mary Showcase event are now approaching their most vital phase. TV executives now have to deal with the possibility of playoff games that barely draw 500,000 people after relying on Clark-driven ratings to support their programming expenditures. This has a domino effect whereby lower viewership results in lower ad income, which eventually affects the league's capacity to continue paying players the salaries and operating costs they have been requesting. The most significant feature of this whole disaster is how it supports all of the objections made by doubters regarding the WNBA's purported breakthrough. It has been demonstrated that critics who claimed that the league's expansion was purely based on the star power of a single player rather than on real, long-term interest in the product were entirely correct. The market has been brutally clear in its communication. Regardless of how forcefully it is promoted, the majority of consumers just do not want to buy WNBA basketball without Caitlin Clark.
Sports media is upset at the WNBA for what they've been doing to Caitlin Clark. You hear me? Depriving everybody from enjoying the game of basketball. You hear me? She put women basketball back on the map. Yes, the WNBA has been irrelevant. And I'm glad everybody is speaking up. Colin Cowherd, Jason Whitlock, Stephen A. Smith, Skip Bayless. Yeah, everybody upset. Bruh, like, these women, they so petty, bruh, and they don't even care, dog. They don't mind hurting themselves just to hurt you, bruh. That's crazy. By watching.
The legacy of Commissioner Engelbert will be determined by how disastrously she mishandled the league's most important resource. Engelbert oversaw a system that failed to sufficiently protect the player in charge of the league's overall financial recovery and instead encouraged excessive physicality, rather than erecting safeguards around Clark and fostering an atmosphere where the biggest star in the league could flourish. As a result, the one player whose presence determined whether the league as a whole was relevant or irrelevant suffers a season-ending injury. A harsh example of how rapidly manufactured success can vanish when it is based on unsustainable underpinnings, is the WNBA's current predicament. Without its main draw, the league that had been announcing its entrance as a popular entertainment choice is now fighting to keep the interest of its core audience. The cost of tickets is always rising. TV ratings are getting close to all-time lows, and sports media coverage is dwindling quickly, due to the league's failure to safeguard the only resource that enabled their recent success.
Similar reactions to the drastic change in ticket prices following Clark's injury. Because it's unwatchable without her, someone else added, did her injury deflate ticket prices or just prove she's the entire league's economy? Another person wrote, honestly, I'm surprised it isn't more than that. I would have guessed 50%. No matter what you think about Clark, she brings people to watch. We're lucky to be able to see her. I hope she comes back strong. You don't have to like her, but she is the headline and puts butts in.
There is no denying the WNBA's hard mathematical reality. Without Caitlin, even the most gloomy opponents couldn't have predicted the rate at which they are reverting to their pre-2024 level of irrelevance. Clark. The cost of tickets has dropped. Ratings have vanished. Additionally, media interest has drastically decreased, to the point where several networks are considering cutting back on their WNBA programming. The league that believed it had finally arrived is now brutally realizing that multiple transcendent individuals are necessary for long-term success. And without that person, they're back to where they were before, fighting for attention in a saturated sports market that has already given way to more alluring forms of entertainment. The message is very obvious. Without Caitlin Clark, the WNBA would have remained a niche product that the majority of sports fans overlook. There is no deception in the ratings, attendance statistics, or ticket costs. The WNBA's whole financial strategy depended on Caitlin Clark, and her absence has shown how phony their purported expansion was. The league will continue its swift decline back into the sports entertainment obscurity in which it spent the most of its 28-year history until everybody